here who wants to speak with us.
This happened in middle school, and I still haven't told anyone the truth. I had a friend that moved out of state, but when her birthday came around, her parents bought a couple of hotel rooms in town, and a group of us stayed with her in one to celebrate. When it was time for bed, we all couldn't sleep, because we were having such a good time and decided to all sit on one bed. There was 2 per room, and tell ghost stories, true or made up. After about an hour of stories, someone had a bright idea to make a Ouija board. I don't remember exactly how we made one in a hotel room, but we somehow had access to cardboard, paper and glue. When it was done, a few girls decided they were going to go to bed because they were getting too creeped out and didn't want to mess with it. So only 4 of us participated. We sat on the floor in a circle around it, and each placed a finger on the cardboard chip, not sure what it's called, and we asked a few questions. We thought it was funny, but at the same time, no one tried moving the chip because we were curious to see if it would actually work with a makeshift board. Someone had the bright idea to ask, "Is there a demon here?" or something along those lines, and was promptly scolded by some of the girls that were watching from the safety of a bed. Us at the board kind of awkwardly laughed because we were a little creeped out. And then the chip started to move towards yes. We all jumped up and screamed, and the only 2 that didn't start crying was me and the one who asked the question. Everyone who was still up started getting angry with her, and she swore she didn't move the chip, and tears started forming in her eyes. I knew she wasn't lying, and the other 2 were so shaken up that they weren't either. So I lied. I told everyone I moved it, and I realized it was a jerk move and I should have fessed up sooner. I got an earful, but at least everyone calmed down, and we threw the board in the trash. Everyone probably still thinks I was a jerk for scaring them, but I think it's better. No one knows what really happened that night.
I had a teacher who had a very interesting Ouija board story. This teacher joked around and wasn't really ever serious, but was funny as hell and an overall good teacher. But when Ouija boards came up, she got extremely serious and shared a bone-chilling story. She had some friends over one weekend and they got bored and decided to break out the good old household Ouija board. They had asked questions and got weird vibes from some of the answers that they received, but pushed forward. Finally, someone asked when they were going to die, and it went around the circle and everyone got a decent number in their 80s or 70s. But one girl got the age 19. Granted, they were juniors/seniors in high school, so that was only a few years away. A few years go by, and the girl who got 19 as the age of death was killed by a car while walking on a beach, while on spring break. Her friend she was with broke her leg or something. She was 19, just a week away from turning 20. The nature of the death and the fact that she was close to her 20th birthday makes it so scary because she was so close to defying the Ouija board. Never ever doing it. Needless to say, I'm too terrified to get answers like that.
Hello everybody. Just before starting, English is not my primary language. I used Reverso to translate most of my thoughts. I just wanted to share my story because I think we are all here in this subreddit for a reason. I'm truly passionate about paranormal stuff. Everything started 20 years ago for me. So this happened during a summer vacation in Spain. My sister, 2 cousins, both girls, and 2 other cousins, both boys, and I was staying at our grandmother's apartment. We were all pretty young, between 8 and 13 years old. I was the oldest, along with one of my girl cousins. We used to love scaring ourselves with paranormal games. One of our favorite things to do was try and call spirits using a makeshift Ouija board. Except we used a Scrabble board. We'd arrange the Scrabble tiles in a circle, like the alphabet, place a glass in the middle, light some candles, and ask questions. Always after midnight, of course. We were just kids. That night, the atmosphere was different. It was extremely hot. Spain was going through a massive heat wave, and we were on the top floor of a 5-story building. The terrace wrapped all the way around the apartment, and we set up everything out there, under the stairs, with candles. Like usual, my cousin and I had our hands lightly on the glass. Sometimes we'd secretly move it, just a little to scare the others. It was part of the fun. But this time, no one was faking. We started the usual way. Spirit, are you there? If there's a spirit here, make yourself known. And suddenly, the glass moved. Not in the slow, hesitant way it usually did when we were messing around. It moved fast, with purpose. I felt something almost pulling my hand. It was like I wasn't in control of it anymore. I looked at my cousin and immediately knew she wasn't doing it either. The glass quickly slid across the tiles, stopping on 7 letters. Then I yanked my hand away. Everyone else panicked and backed off too. The session ended right there. The letters spelled S-A-U-T-E-Z-D. We sat there in silence. Then someone whispered, "Sortez-tu?" In English, that translates to jump off the, as in jump off the balcony. We were on the 5th floor. Needless to say, we never did another session after that. We packed up immediately and didn't say much for the rest of the night. The last few days of that vacation felt heavy. No one slept well. We never saw or heard anything else unusual, but the atmosphere had changed. We were scared, and we all knew that something very strange had happened. To this day, whenever we all meet up, someone brings it up. We still talk about that night. I haven't touched a board. I haven't touched a spirit board or even a Scrabble board since. But I've continued reading about the paranormal because I know in my gut that we experienced something real. It fascinates me, but I don't think I'll ever go near that kind of thing again.
I've gone back and forth with the idea of sharing this for a while. After searching through a lot of places on the internet, this seems like the best place to discuss them. I still have my reservations though. In any case, I am looking for answers. Several years ago I was doing my undergraduate studies at a large university in Pennsylvania. This event happened in 2005. I was dating a girl called Erin at the time who was big into New Age ideas, paganism, magic, and the like. And I did learn some cool stuff from her too. Eventually I met some of her like-minded friends, and in our conversations it came up that one of the rooms in the oldest building on campus caused 2 of them, a guy and a girl who were dating, to experience a lot of psychic distress. Kyle had gotten nosebleeds in the classroom, and Julie often grew disoriented or frightened when she was there. Someone in our group had the bright idea to sneak up there one night, and of course we all went for it. It was me, Kyle, Julie, Erin, and a medium named Audra and her friend Sharon, and another girl called Kesha. Sharon and Kesha, like me, had a lot of supernatural experiences in the past, but didn't consider themselves mediums or sensitive or anything. So one night we bought a novelty Ouija board from Walmart, a glow-in-the-dark one because why not, and started doing our thing. At first the planchette didn't do anything, but then it started twitching and eventually it was whipping around choosing letters that made no sense to any of us. Until afterwards, as Kyle was writing down the letters. Then out of nowhere, Audra started mini convulsions. I don't know how else to describe it. Her eyes rolled up and she started spasming and making these horrific pig noises. Not just snorting or squealing, but belting those noises out like I never thought a human would be able to make. She started crawling her way to the door. The planchette was going crazy, and when Kyle jumped to her to keep her from heading towards the stairs which were directly across the hall, we all kind of snapped out of it. Audra was a small, slim girl, but it took 3 or 4 of us to keep her from leaving the room, and all the while there was still horrible noises coming from her, and we all had this incredible sense of danger and foreboding. There wasn't a terrible smell or anything like you read sometimes, but it was terrifying. Not to be anticlimactic, but after that we packed everything up, went back to my apartment, over a crappy pizza shop, and stayed huddled together for quite a while. I swear I threw the Ouija board out, but years later I would find it under my bed at a parent's house, when I was packing up to move. Seriously, any thoughts or experiences similar, or general comments would be great.
My name is Gary. When I was 19 years old, I lived in supported accommodation. It was a brand new, very large building which was divided into 15 individual bedsits. Opposite my bedsit lived a guy who I felt was extremely different and interesting. He was what I describe as a spiritual person and had a deep interest in the spirit world. He would do tarot readings and astrological charts. Although I too have always been fascinated by these subjects myself, at the time I would consider myself as a skeptic. He was extremely intelligent and I would often have deep, meaningful conversations with him. He was only 2 years older than me, but very mature for his age, and was very calm, completely the opposite to me at that time. One evening he asked if I would be interested in doing a Ouija board, as I told him I was skeptical and I didn't believe in the spirit world. So we were in his bedsit and started, as everyone does, asking if there was anyone who wanted to communicate with us. Straight away we got an answer. We picked up a spirit claiming to be a younger girl. At first everything felt okay, and I didn't feel uneasy. That rapidly changed. Dave was very experienced with these things, and at first I didn't understand why he was writing every question asked and every response down on paper. The reason why soon became clear. He started concentrating the questions, and soon picked up on indiscrepancies in what the spirit was saying. The spirit claimed to be a girl of 9 years old who had died in a fire. It soon became clear this wasn't the case. The atmosphere changed and I started to feel very uneasy. My palms were sweaty. There was an oppressive feel in the room and also a weird smell. The feelings I had were what you would associate with someone or something innocent at first. But once we knew the spirit had told us untruths, the feelings were totally different. They became powerful, not in the sensation, but you felt like you were in the presence of something powerful, angry, and malevolent. We had tried to end what we had started, but it was as if this spirit would not let us go. And we had a feeling something sinister would happen if the right protocol wasn't applied. We found out that this was in fact a woman. Dave asked, "What is it you want?" And it said, "You." Now, I don't know whether this was a mischievous spirit and enjoying me and Dave feeling terrified, or whether it genuinely wanted to harm or take control of Dave. She said she was killed by fire, and it was Dave's family member who did it. We couldn't understand how or why she was saying this, or whether it was even true or it was just a mischievous spirit, but I can only say it didn't feel like it was a cheeky, mischievous spirit. This felt like something powerful. By this time, not only were we terrified, but you could feel something far greater and more powerful than at first. We were exhausted. It was like she was draining our energy. I have to admit, I was close to feeling desperate and regret at ever saying I would do this. One of our friends, Steve, in the bedsit at the other end of the corridor, came and knocked on the door. Dave started to explain what was going on. He then said for him to go and get the priest from the local church. Poor Steve looked at us like we were mental, but agreed. It seemed like ages before the priest came. He stood in the corridor with the door ajar, and his exact words were, "Boys, you don't know what you've done." I could see clearly he looked very concerned. He started to speak in a foreign language. I could only assume he was praying in Latin. He said he had blessed the room. We were able to finally end what we started, and I was so drained and relieved. I didn't have a proper night's sleep in 3 weeks without having nightmares. I slept with the lights on for weeks. I felt like I was being watched and followed. I'd be in my bedsit, and I would turn around because I felt like something was behind me at times. Dave had said he had similar feelings also. Dave had done some research into his family tree. His name was Dave Hopkins, and he was able to find out Matthew Hopkins was a very distant relative of his. Matthew Hopkins was a famous witch hunter a long time ago, and many women were burnt at the stake for being witches with no evidence whatsoever. When he told me this, I had a shiver go down my spine like I've never experienced before. I'm not sure what to make of this, still to this day. Was it a mischievous spirit? Or did this woman really die at the hands of Matthew Hopkins in some sham witch trial? All I will say is, I will never forget the sense of being small and insignificant in the presence of something much more powerful than me. I haven't done a Ouija board since, and never will.
This was last summer, about a year ago. I was in rehab and decided to make a Ouija board, and me and my 3 roommates all agreed we would try it out. We were all very skeptical, mostly leaning towards the side of disbelief, but still open. It was a full moon that night. We started by all holding hands in a circle around the board and saying that we were open to spirits, willing to talk, and I guess just putting the energy out there. We then took the planchette and moved it around the board in circles a few times. We were in rehab with no access to the internet, so kind of just doing what we felt was right, and weren't sure on proper procedures. When we were all moving our hands, we were heavy on the board, and you could feel it being dragged. I will admit I tried moving it on my own, as well as in the beginning just to mess with my friends, but again the planchette felt like it was being dragged. But then I stopped and began to take it seriously, and when it was actually moving, it's hard to explain, but there was an entirely different energy to it. It glides across the board like butter. The board and planchette, of course, were made of cardboard, so it freaked us all out. Sometimes a couple of us would take our hands off, or we'd tell another girl to move her hand and it would keep going. It spells one of the girls' names, Sally. We asked who's contacting her, and it said, sister. Sally had a little sister that died under her care when they were small. Sally was scared. She asked for its name and it's spelled F-L-O-R. I'm thinking maybe it's trying to say Florida but stopped, but at this point Sally is shaking and in tears. Her sister name was Flor. None of us knew that. After that I think we contacted another spirit and said that it was female and had been shot, and maybe another one. It's crazy because the energies feel different, like how it glides across the board. So now we're all total believers. I think maybe the next night or 2 nights after, me and my roommate decide to play. I think we contacted a spirit similar to the last one when all of a sudden the vibe completely changes. It spells out my name. And I'm like, oh no, as my name is very unique. And even though I believe in this now, that's the last thing I wanted to happen, for something to address me directly. Then the planchette starts zooming back and forth between A and Z really fast over and over, basically flying out of our hands. We're kind of scared, and no matter what we ask, it keeps repeating the same letters over and over, and we get spooked and stop playing. The next night we decide to try again. Start like usual, putting forth our intentions, doing circles and asking how many spirits were there with us. My name was spelled out again, and I asked who it was, and it said Father. My friend asked me if my dad was dead, so I said no. We asked it what it wanted, and dude, it was spelling out painful, and then went back to doing the AZ thing. Deciding it wasn't going anywhere, we said goodbye and put it away. We tried one more night, but it was the same spirit messing with us with the same letters over and over, so didn't do it again. The whole experience was so insane to me. I kept a journal of all of this when it happened. So I went and looked, and tried to give all the details I could, for you to understand the experience.
Here we go. I'm from South Jersey. One summer, a group of my friends and I got obsessed with ghost hunting. We did all the hits up and down the state. Jersey Devil Ruins, The Devil's Tree, Hookerman, Shades of Death Road, Clinton Road, and a few local legends in the Sweetwater/Padstow area. But nothing prepared us for the Ouija board. The plan was to go to a local cemetery and meet up with one of our roommate's friend. I'm not making any of this up. He went by Death Crow. DC, as I'll refer to him from here on out, was deep into the world of paranormal and clearly made it his entire personality. He had black hair tied up in a ponytail and a long braided mud-vein style goatee. He didn't speak much. It was dark out, but I could see him carefully sizing up each and every one of us when we arrived to meet him. We were told ahead of time by our roommate to not ask his real name and to take what we were about to do seriously. As a group of early 20-something ballbusters, this was good advice, and we all actually did a good job of being respectful of whatever he had planned. This cemetery was a hotspot according to DC. First, he split the 6 of us into groups of 2 and had us walk around the cemetery to get warmed up. I've had my share of experiences that I can't explain, and I know energy has a lot to do with it. The more you feed in, the more that comes out. I'd say tonight's group was made up of 70% believers and 30% skeptics. Wasn't the usual ghost hunting crew. After about 20 minutes of walking around, we all met back up at the mausoleum steps. This is when DC brought out the Ouija board. He took it out of his trunk and held it up to the headlights of his car so it could charge. That's right, it glowed in the dark. Now none of us had any idea what was planned, and I had never used one before. But I just remember thinking, a glow-in-the-dark Ouija board made by Milton Bradley. Huh, okay. We all sat on the steps and begun. The 6 of us surrounded the board while DC sat up against the huge doors of the mausoleum. I was facing him, my back to the rest of the cemetery. We started asking it questions. Are there spirits here? Give us a sign. Your typical stuff. There was some movement from the planchette, but most of us were suspicious of each other to mess with it. So at this point, who really knows what's what? We asked again for a name, and I remember feeling the planchette jerked in a deliberate way that didn't feel like anything we were doing to it. To this day, I can't remember the name that it spelled. It was definitely Spanish or Latin. Let's hope it wasn't Latin. But it was an odd name none of us could have faked. We asked how it died. It spelled water. We asked if there were other spirits here. It spelled yes. My roommate then had the brilliant idea to ask if bad things were going to happen, and it spelled yes. All of a sudden I felt cold. I thought it was chills, but then I could see my breath. Everyone noticed at the same time how cold it suddenly got. This was the middle of July. As all this was happening, I hear DC go, "Oh," like he knew something we didn't. I looked up, and he was staring straight behind me. That's when the board started to spin. We had all taken our hands off the planchette when the temperature dropped, and now the board was slowly turning all on its own. We froze. It picked up speed, spun around fully 3 times and stopped. I remember checking for fishing line, or some sort of whatever on the bottom. Nothing was tampered with. I suddenly felt heavy, like something was wrapping around me, pushing its full weight down. DC looked right at me and said, "You should go." I wasn't about to stick around for Act 2. I left and took 2 of my other super spooked buddies with me. When our roommate got home, he said they asked the spirit if it favored anyone in the group, and it answered with my initials. They then asked if I was the reason bad things were going to happen, and it said yes. It then spelled move several times. They went from the steps to the hood of the car, to a bench, to a fountain, which is where it said goodbye. My roommate later told me DC said he knew I was going to be the one to draw something out. He told me to leave because he didn't want it to attach to me. Believe what you will about these kinds of things, but I'll never forget the feeling like a weighted blanket was thrown on me out of nowhere. Don't use Ouija boards, kids.
I tried to contact a paranormal entity, and some not so fun things happened. So this is the time my friends and I decided to be extra dumb. And I say this because I want all of those listening to understand that I, as well as my friends, now fully understand how stupid we were being. The important backstory for this location, Proctor Valley. Proctor Valley is in San Diego County and connects the towns of Otay and Jamal. It is protected and is a wildlife area, so there are no houses, no buildings, no businesses. It's situated behind a prominent mountain with hilly ridges boxing in the valley. It is said that this valley is a center for the unexplained. Stories ranging from lights in the sky, ghost cars, ladies in white, random screams, the usual stories that surround almost every isolated dirt road. The place is surrounded with rumors. It is, however, in actuality, a dangerous place. Being situated near the US-Mexico border, it is a pathway frequented for drug smuggling, and being an isolated dirt road on the outskirts of a major city, things tend to go down there. You have your usual terrible stuff, like carjacking, people having their lives ended, as well as lots of bad other things. But a murder in particular stands out. The apparent poisoning of a teenage girl in a blue floral dress that was never identified, found barefoot on the side of the road. Now, time to share my experience. I had driven down the road late at night several times with friends for fun. The place has very few trees, let alone any large ones, but about midway down the road there is a very large tree hanging halfway over the road. This tree has always given me a bad feeling, so I never felt comfortable stopping there to explore. However, this night I was determined. So once and for all I had to know if this place had something weird going on. I wanted my own experience, and I wanted it badly. I had dug up my family's old Ouija board and studied for weeks on the proper use of it, and how to get the results you want. The whole shebang. We purchased the correct candles, and found the most pure soul we could find, and we drove out to the road. This ended up being a bit of an event, as about 10 people showed up. 4 of us used the Ouija board, 2 filmed, and 4 sat in lawn chairs. Once we all got ready, we began. I, being dumb and unoriginal, thought we should go straight to Demon Land and try to anger a demon and contact it. Which demon? Pazuzu. Again, I was dumb and unoriginal. Well, after we initially started, we heard what sounded like orchestral music being played. Being on a road, we figured it was another car driving down in the distance, but would wait for it to pass and continue, because it would be a bit awkward if someone drove by and a bunch of people were summoning a demon. We waited 25 minutes, but no car showed up. There were no headlights, no noise besides the music, and us being a bit confused and somewhat scared, we carried on. The planchette was moving, but based on the answers, someone had to be moving it. So when a random twig snapped and everyone jumped out of fear, I just stayed with my finger on the planchette. One person, the person moving the planchette, got too scared and opted out. So I and 2 others braved on. I did my best to anger whatever could be out there, and to my surprise we got a response. There was no music being played anymore, and the piece was moving. I asked if anyone was there, and if they wished to communicate. The piece slowly moved to yes in a slow, smooth motion that honestly felt terrifying. It felt like it was being dragged across the board, not like someone was pushing or sliding it. With the confirmation of something wishing to speak, I moved to the next question. Are you Pazuzu? The same feeling. The planchette moved to no. My heart sunk. I was thinking, okay, well I got something biting, let's see what it is. I see everything is fixed on the board, eyes locked, and I asked probably the next logical thing that most people would. Are you a good spirit? Then the 2 phones that were being used to film the event turn off. They then wouldn't turn back on, and the planchette begins to move. It slides to the letter G, and we all let out a big phew. Everyone was relieved it was going to spell good, but then unsurprisingly, it moved to O, more confirmation, but then it stopped. Nothing. No movement at all for over 5 minutes. It was telling us to leave. I asked, do you want us to go? And as I finished the question, my friend drops to her knees. She was screaming and crying. I moved the planchette to goodbye, and I say it and rushed to her and asked her what happened. She said someone was walking over us and pointed down the road. I looked down, and all I saw was a cloud of dust roll off the road 15 feet away. This was the most honest person I'd ever known, and decided right then that we were leaving. She described the person walking towards us as having dark hair, long limbs, but no distinguished facial features. They walked like a video game character, glitching where they stride, definitely didn't match pace at all, and their feet didn't seem to touch the ground. When she looked at it, she said she felt every emotion she'd ever felt come over her. She equated it to the feeling of your family dying while you win the lottery on your wedding day. This was almost 2 years ago. and my friend still refuses to go out at night. I tried a year ago, and she cried in the car the whole time, saying she's getting closer. And yes, she's been attending therapy for this. I don't know what she saw that night, but I personally don't want to find out. I have not returned to the road since. I stored away the board, but it went missing 6 days later to the day, along with the candles and books.
My buddy Jeff, using fake names, got a Ouija board from his aunt for his birthday. Weird gift, I know, but he left it unopened in his closet for years, until we were having a discussion about them one day at the soccer field. Our friend Rob happened to be over, and he was a staunch atheist. Like a mock you for believing in anything kind of atheist. Jeff was raised Catholic, but never put much stock into it. He was Catholic in name, but not very spiritual. He was very scientifically minded, and ended up actually going to MIT for rocket science. He graduated recently. I was raised Christian, but had largely fallen away from my faith at that stage in my life. Jeff wouldn't discount the possibility of an afterlife, which prompted Rob to ask if we were to mess with the board to prove that it was nothing. We all said sure, and after soccer we drove home, cleaned up, ate dinner and met at Jeff's. Jeff was scientific-minded, as I said. He wanted to see if it would work. He wasn't about to fudge the results by moving the planchette. Rob didn't want it to work. He wanted us to look stupid for his own amusement. I knew for a fact that I didn't move the planchette in any way. So this was a great test. I trusted everyone involved that if that damn thing moved, it wasn't any of us. It moved all right. We contacted a child spirit. Everyone was screaming at one another for moving the piece, but none of us were. Rob eventually asked what the boy missed the most about life. It responded, hugs. Rob didn't want to do it anymore. Jeff didn't want it in his house anymore. I was stunned. Rob went outside and had a long smoke by himself. Jeff and I asked him if he was okay, and he said no. His worldview flipped over. He actually ended up becoming a Buddhist shortly after, a spiritual journey. Jeff didn't appear to be largely affected by it. He remained open-minded and still is to this day. He just has to be careful about which spaces he discusses it in. As for me, I ended up a born-again Christian after my father passed away a few years later. I've had insane interactions with him from the other side, and I'm convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that our story goes on after death. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you all so much for listening. If you have a story you'd like to share with the channel, please send it to my email, which will be found in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, consider signing up for my Patreon, which you can watch my videos ad-free and usually with bonus stories, as well as other perks depending on the level. This year, I will be redesigning my merch store, so keep an eye out for that one. And as always, the biggest thank you is to all of you. I truly appreciate all of your support over the last couple of years. And remember,
Papa loves you.